From Stormfront choking on her own blood,
Schatten einen Apfelbums.
to Madeline Stillwell getting her skull melted by her own twisted creation. Today we're breaking down every single person who got exactly what they deserved in The Boys. Starting with Translucent. Behind his fake superhero smile was an evil person whose extreme arrogance forced Butcher and Huey to get their hands incredibly dirty. Translucent was a high-profile member of the Seven, but behind the shiny superhero branding, he was nothing more than a degenerate voyeur. Thanks to his carbon metamaterial skin, he was completely indestructible from the outside. This invulnerability bred a massive ego, making him believe he was an untouchable god. Instead of saving people, he spent most of his time using his invisibility to skulk around the women's restrooms at Vought Tower, completely violating the privacy of his own teammates, like Starlight.
I'll just go.
But his perversions were just the start of his crimes. When Butcher and Huey started poking around Vought's dirty secrets, Translucent tracked Huey back to his electronics store. He didn't just want to silence him, he brutally beat Huey. Thankfully, Butcher intervened, and they managed to capture the invisible soup and lock him in a reinforced cage. Translucent remained insanely arrogant the entire time, constantly mocking them. That was until Frenchie realized that while his outside was indestructible, his insides were just as soft as anyone else's. So they knocked him out and shoved a block of C4 straight up his colon. Suddenly, the arrogant god wasn't so tough anymore. When Huey held the detonator, Translucent finally realized he wasn't invincible. He dropped the smug act and started begging for his life.
I'm not getting back in that cage, man. I am dead.
But Huey knew that letting him go meant signing his own death warrant. He pressed the button. In a split second, the C4 detonated. Translucent's massive ego literally blew up in his face. But when unearned confidence doesn't get you killed in this universe, pathetic desperation usually will. Which brings us to Mesmer. Mesmer was once a beloved child star, but as an adult, he was nothing more than a pathetic, washed-up has-been desperate to reclaim his glory days. When the boys went to him for help, they offered him a chance to do something genuinely good. Mesmer used his telepathy to read Kimiko's mind.
There's a camp in a jungle. She's a soldier.
Pretending to be an ally while secretly gathering enough information to expose their true identities. But Mesmer wasn't interested in being a hero. He wanted to buy his way back into Vought's good graces and regain custody of his daughter. So he took surveillance photos of Butcher and the crew and handed them straight to Homelander on a silver platter.
It's my phone.
Mesmer wasn't smart enough to realize that you don't cross William Butcher and live to tell the tale. No. Butcher tracked the telepath down to a public bathroom at a superhero fan convention.
How did you? I stuck a little bug on you back at that shithole of yours. 'Cause fuck you.
When Mesmer realized he was cornered, he reverted to his pathetic, begging nature, trying to negotiate his way out of a death sentence.
Your wife? She's missing? I can help you find her.
But Butcher wasn't there to make a deal. He grabbed Mesmer by the back of the head and violently slammed his face into the porcelain sink. Again and again and again until the sink cracked. Crossing Butcher is obviously a fatal mistake for a street-level snitch. But as Vought's top executive quickly learned, trying to manipulate Homelander is a completely different level of suicide. Madeline Stillwell. Homelander, standing silently in Madeline Stillwell's dimly lit bedroom, is one of the most terrifying moments in the entire series. But to truly understand the weight of this execution, we have to rewind and look at how Madeline built her empire. Unlike the soup she managed at Vought, Madeline didn't have powers. Her weapon was pure psychological manipulation.
Okay, we are not going to be able to cover this up forever. Translucent does not show his face soon. People are going to start to notice.
She was a cold, calculating corporate mastermind who prioritized stock prices over human lives. When the mayor of Baltimore threatened to expose the secret of Compound V,
And Steve, this Compound V, any rumors you may have heard about my heroes?
she casually ordered his assassination without blinking an eye. But her most dangerous project was Homelander himself. She used a deeply twisted mix of maternal and sexual psychology, complete with a bizarre milk obsession, to keep the most powerful being on the planet wrapped around her finger.
I love you. You're the most powerful man in the whole wide world.
Madeline played a dangerous game, thinking she could keep a literal god on a leash. Do you think Homelander actually loved her, or was she always just a corporate asset to him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Her ultimate fatal mistake was the lie she built their relationship on. For years, she looked Homelander in the eyes and swore that Becca Butcher and his infant son Ryan had died during childbirth. Desperately trying to stop him from realizing his true potential as a father. Now, snap back to that bedroom. Homelander had just uncovered the truth about his son, and Madeline's illusion of control shattered instantly.
You promised me. No more lies. You fucking promised me.
He trapped her in a terrifyingly calm conversation. Realizing she was cornered, she tried to use her usual manipulative tactics, crying and playing the devoted mother figure one last time.
I love you, I swear.
But tell me the truth.
But it was too late. Homelander stared deep into her eyes, activated his heat vision, leaving her lifeless body slumped violently on the bedroom floor. Madeline spent her entire career hiding her cruelty behind a warm, corporate smile. Some soups, however, completely skip the PR training and proudly wear their brutality right out in the open. Blue Hawk. Blue Hawk was everything wrong with law enforcement, wrapped up in a patriotic spandex suit. He was an unhinged racist thug who actively over-policed minority neighborhoods, resulting in the unprovoked murders of innocent black men. He hid behind his Vought-approved badge, using his superhuman strength to bully and brutalize anyone who couldn't fight back. When Vought forced him to attend a community center meeting to deliver a phony public apology,
I apologize if any of mine have been perceived as being racist, but that is not who I...
his massive ego couldn't handle the crowd's totally justified anger. Instead of showing an ounce of remorse, he lost his temper completely.
I do not see color. I only see crime.
In a blind rage, he attacked the unarmed civilians, throwing people across the room and permanently paralyzing A-Train's brother, Nathan. Even after the attack, Blue Hawk remained entirely unapologetic, shouting hateful rhetoric and playing the victim. But his unchecked brutality finally caught up with him when A-Train decided to bypass the legal system and handle things himself. A-Train confronted Blue Hawk, slammed him to the pavement, and grabbed him by the leg. Using his super speed, A-Train dragged Blue Hawk across the rough asphalt at hundreds of miles per hour. The sheer kinetic horror of the friction shredded Blue Hawk's costume, skin, and bones, until A-Train finally stopped. A-Train making sure Blue Hawk felt every inch of that pavement was incredibly satisfying. Yet, that street-level bigotry basically looks like child's play compared to the century-old monster hiding at the top of the Seven. Stormfront. Stormfront presented herself as a bold, modern feminist icon who wasn't afraid to speak her mind.
I will never lie to you again.
I will tell you everything.
But behind the edgy memes and social media savvy, she was actually Clara Vought, a literal century-old Nazi.
I was born in 1919 in Berlin.
She was the absolute definition of pure evil. Her cruelty was unmatched, slaughtering Kimiko's brother Kenji.
Bastards.
She didn't care about collateral damage either, casually murdering dozens of innocent black residents in an apartment complex just for the fun of it while hunting him down. But her ultimate master plan was to manipulate Homelander's son, Ryan.
We are?
Bad guys want to hurt us just because of what we look like. They want to wipe us from this earth.
Trying to groom him into a living weapon for a global white supremacist uprising. She thought she was building a master race, but she fatally underestimated a mother's bond. When she pinned Becca Butcher against a tree and prepared to kill her, Ryan finally snapped. The attack completely fried off her limbs and burned her to a charred, blackened crisp. As she lay in the dirt, missing an arm and both legs, her mind was completely broken, retreating back to her past as she mumbled deliriously in German, but her true end came in Season 3. Surviving as a burnt, pathetic stump in a hospital bed, she finally realized that Homelander didn't care about her Nazi master plan. He only cared about himself. In a final act of utter despair, she committed suicide by biting her own tongue off, choking on her own blood. Unlike Stormfront, who died thinking she was a god, other soups die entirely crushed by the realization that they're actually monsters. Lamplighter. Lamplighter was once a proud, original member of the Seven, but his legacy was built entirely on ash and cowardice. Years ago, he intended to assassinate Grace Mallory in her sleep as revenge, but in a horrific mistake, he mercilessly burned her innocent grandchildren alive in their beds instead.
You murdered innocent children. Shut the fuck. You watched them burned alive, crying for their mama. If that's not an animal, then what is, huh? I didn't know!
That horrific act broke him, leading to his demotion. But instead of seeking redemption, he became Vought's personal incinerator at the Sage Grove Center. He spent his days as an orderly, burning failed, mutated Vought test subjects alive to cover up the company's twisted experiments. He wanted to be a real superhero, but he was nothing more than a human garbage disposal. When he finally teamed up with Huey to infiltrate Vought Tower, he realized that his old statue had been removed. The company had completely erased him. He wasn't a hero.
They moved my statue? What?
Standing in the Vought conference room, the weight of his murders and his own pathetic existence finally crushed him. He decided he couldn't live with the guilt or the humiliation anymore. He looked at his own hand, summoned his flames, and uttered one final pathetic realization before taking his own life.
I just wanted to make my dad proud.
Lamplighter ultimately took the coward's way out rather than face his own guilt. Not everyone in Vought's orbit folds that easily, though. Some washed-up sidekicks are perfectly willing to go down swinging. Gunpowder was the former teenage sidekick of Soldier Boy who grew up to be a highly toxic right-wing extremist and a prominent spokesperson for the VRA. He presented himself as a hardcore, gun-toting patriot, but in reality, he was just a terrified lackey who spent his entire life protecting an abuser. Back in Nicaragua, he actively covered up Soldier Boy's friendly fire crimes. And in the present day, he was still doing Vought's dirty work without a second thought.
If Dakota Bob Singer gets elected president, will you say hello to left-wing socialism?
When Butcher started digging into Soldier Boy's past, Gunpowder didn't hesitate to use lethal force. Fully intending to murder him in cold blood, just to keep his dark secrets buried. He thought his weapons made him completely invincible. But he didn't realize that Butcher had just taken his very first dose of Temp V. Gunpowder fired his weapon point blank, but the bullets simply bounced off Butcher's chest. The shock on Gunpowder's face was priceless as Butcher stepped right through the gunfire. Butcher didn't just beat him, he humiliated him. Butcher's eyes glowed red, and he unleashed a devastating blast of heat vision that cleanly bisected Gunpowder's head in half. I mean, that kind of blind loyalty is fatal, a lesson another member of Payback understood perfectly when she sold out her team to save her own skin. Crimson Countess.
Shining sea and mountains majesty. He did it all for the red, white, and the bold.
Crimson Countess Soldier Boy slowly stepping into the dark, cramped space of Crimson Countess's trailer is a moment decades in the making.
Put it down, now.
But to truly understand why this reunion is a literal ticking time bomb, we have to rewind to Nicaragua in 1984. Back then, Crimson Countess was Soldier Boy's lover and a prominent member of Payback. But behind closed doors, she participated in the ultimate betrayal. She helped execute the ambush, handing the man she supposedly loved over to the Russians to endure decades of unimaginable, agonizing torture. She traded his life so she could be free, and spent the next 40 years hiding her deep selfishness behind a bubbly, fake, philanthropic persona.
They killed Soldier Boy.
What? Who?
The Russians. They had some kind of gun or weapon or something.
That's impossible.
No.
She pretended to care deeply about her chimp sanctuaries, but she still had absolutely zero regard for human life. We saw this perfectly when she carelessly blew an innocent Votland theme park mascot into a bloody mist just to escape Kimiko and Frenchie. Now, snap back to that dark trailer. Soldier Boy had finally returned to America and tracked her down. He stood there, heartbroken, asking her why she sold him out.
Did the Russians pay you?
They didn't.
Instead of apologizing, begging for her life, or showing even a single ounce of remorse for the decades of agony she subjected him to, she twisted the knife one last time with a chillingly casual confession.
I didn't love you. I hated you. We all did.
That was all Soldier Boy needed to hear. The intense, radioactive glow in his chest began to light up the small room. Before she could even react or attempt to run, he let out a massive nuclear blast. The sheer explosive force vaporized the trailer entirely, leaving nothing but a scorched crater and her charred remains. Crimson Countess handing Soldier Boy over to the Russians was a massive, selfish betrayal. No doubt, but as it turns out, she was really just a pawn for the true mastermind standing quietly in the shadows the entire time. Black Noir was Vought's ultimate silent attack dog. For decades, he hid behind his dark mask, ruthlessly carrying out the company's most horrific assassinations and covering up their bloodiest messes without ever asking a single question. He seemed perfectly loyal, but his entire legacy was built on a massive, self-serving betrayal. Back in Nicaragua, Noir was tired of being physically abused and constantly overshadowed by Soldier Boy. So he became the true mastermind behind the mutiny. He orchestrated the ambush that handed his own team leader over to the Russians, all so he could finally step out of his shadow and be Vought's top star. But Noir's greatest crime wasn't just treason. It was the devastating secret he kept from Homelander. Noir knew from the very beginning that Soldier Boy was Homelander's biological father. Yet he stayed completely silent for years, watching Homelander suffer through an agonizing, lonely childhood without ever telling him the truth. When Soldier Boy returned to America and the secret finally came out, Noir panicked. He initially fled Vought Tower.
So, you were in his team. You knew him.
But eventually returned to face the music, desperately hoping his years of blind, unquestioning loyalty would save him. Homelander stood before him, genuinely heartbroken by the betrayal. He looked at the only person in the seven he ever truly trusted.
Did you know that I had a father out there? Alive this whole time?
In a flash of raw, unrestrained anger, Homelander drove his bare fist straight through Noir's armored stomach. Leaving a massive, gaping hole in Noir's abdomen. Noir's unquestioning loyalty bought him absolutely nothing in the end. And unfortunately for Vought's ultimate two-faced politician, all the manipulation in the world wasn't going to save her either. Victoria Newman. Victoria Newman presented herself to the public as a progressive, fiercely anti-soup crusader who wanted to hold Vought accountable. But behind the sharp suits and political smiles, she was actually Stan Edgar's secret weapon, a ruthless soup assassin with a terrifying ability to pop heads with a single glance. She was the ultimate two-faced politician, playing the government and Vought against each other, while leaving a massive trail of headless corpses in her wake. She slaughtered CIA Deputy Director Susan Rayner just as she was about to expose the truth.
Nose.
She turned a live congressional hearing into an absolute bloodbath. Just to secure her own political power. She even betrayed Stan Edgar, the man who raised her, stabbing him in the back the second it benefited her campaign.
Has bravely come forward as a whistleblower and provided evidence of crimes committed within Vought by CEO Stan Edgar.
She thought she could outsmart everyone, endlessly shifting alliances between Homelander, the boys, and the president. But her house of cards finally collapsed. When Homelander turned on her, a desperate Newman tried to cut a deal with the boys, offering to flip sides entirely just to keep her daughter Zoe safe. For a second, it looked like the master manipulator had successfully negotiated her way out of death yet again. But she didn't account for a completely unhinged William Butcher. Butcher stormed into the room, fueled by the Compound V tumor ravaging his body, and was completely taken over by his dark, tentacled powers.
No deals.
Butcher didn't say a word. Thick, monstrous tentacles erupted from his chest and violently grabbed her. Newman screamed as the tentacles wrapped tightly around her arms and legs. Her blood and guts spilled out onto the floor as the master politician was reduced to a torn-up pile of meat in front of everyone. Victoria Newman spent her whole life popping heads, but she was the one who ended up getting completely ripped apart. Who else do you think deserves a spot on this list? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for more videos.